In June, Reuters reported that South Africa's unemployment rate hit an all-time high of 32.6%, which equates to 7.2 million people. 74.7% of the unemployed translates to 1 in 4 South Africans under the age of 24, which means our youth. Founder and CEO of the LFP Group, Pulzone, sees the high unemployment number slightly differently. He sees the 74.7% as opportunities for job creation and socio-economic inclusion. You're listening to our social newscast, brought to you by socialtv.co.za, hosted by me, Sam Marshall. Thank you very much for your time, Louis. I think the most important aspect is to, before we get into the details and what LFP is up to, maybe very quickly, just a bit of history around the company and the organization.
Okay, Sam. So LFP started in 2013. I've been in the education industry for about 17 years. And it was purely initially started as to help disabled people, unemployed disabled people find jobs. So we kind of first started we placed disabled unemployed people into job opportunities. And then when I moved to Johannesburg, I know the whole BEE. I started going into BE, etc., and how we can consult. So we then consulted on training initiatives for companies as well as on their BE scorecard. However, we immediately changed sort of strategy as we saw a vast difference between a BE scorecard and transformation, actual proper transformation in corporate SA. What we then basically did is we proposed to more and more companies a transformation strategy rather than training, which training was one leg of it. You had to train unemployed people, you had to train women, youth, but it was always also your ownership, your management control in your company, what social initiatives are you taking, and are you developing Black-owned enterprises? So training has sort of a net effect on each one of those categories. So we know learnership, and LFP does a lot of learnership, but there's always training amongst everything else as well. If you've got somebody that's in your organization that you want to promote to a management position, they need training. If you're gonna do proper enterprise development of Black-owned entities, there's training portion that needs to happen, mentorship, capacity building programs. So that is the initial strategy, and it's always been the same with LFP. We are agents of transformation, and we provide empowerment solutions. And those empowerment solutions does have a net effect on the BE scorecard because it's aligned. What was quite exciting for me is a typical corporate would say, I want to train 10 people on a learnership. We'll go and recruit them according to their guidelines, females, women, and then we'll run a women empowerment program, and then we will place at least 50 to 70% into jobs that successfully completes the training into jobs. So that was sort of the first, big change in the training industry that we kind of, catapulted. What was quite exciting is at about 2018, we did more than 15,000 people in a short 5-year time frame, which was quite exciting. But it also sort of snowballed an industry, where an industry was really, training a select few people that had access to a select few sort of tools. All of a sudden, we brought people from rural areas into proper training initiatives in the form of learnerships and others, and placed them into jobs. And that was quite exciting and a big shift in the training industry.
Louis, when you hear numbers like, for example, the Reuters report that South Africa's unemployment rate hit an all-time high of 32.6%, which equates to around 7.2 million people, that 74.7% of unemployed numbers translates to 1 in 4 South Africans under the age of 24, which is essentially youth. What is your first reaction to numbers like that?
Well, my first reaction is it's probably more, but honestly, Sam, I think there's a lack of creating opportunities. You know, I mean, even looking at our current situation, people are sitting at home. I visit rural areas a lot. People are sitting at home. They've got nothing to do. And we all know that we need to give our people things to do. A reason to get up early, to get into routine, to go to a job, to go to training, to go to university. Unfortunately, a lack of creating opportunities or a lack of coming together as government, as public and private, has put these people as make them unemployed. I mean, and that's going to get a lot worse. For me, there's a lot of opportunity for our government and for private to take hands and fix the problem. I mean, honestly, for me, this is not so difficult. People make it difficult. We need to provide scalable opportunities in our country. The biggest problem with most of the opportunities created is isolated. 20 people here, 50 people there, 100 people here, and in some larger expenses, we have 1,000, 2,000, and maybe 3,000 people in a particular region. Now, those opportunities need to be scaled. Now, where LFP fits into that mold is we have scaled training beyond, I think, most people's imagination 10 years ago when we brought in a scalable education opportunity that people, unemployed people specifically, could take part in. I think the YES program is one great example of what people can do in a successful way. We run a lot of these youth employment programs, and I think we need to get more buy-in. But it's an opportunity. We as private companies, we need to collaborate more. We need to bring public sector into it so that we can scale opportunities. Like I said, isolated opportunities in the bigger scheme of things doesn't work anymore in South Africa. The sooner we can scale opportunities to people that need it, the sooner we will see a huge dip in unemployment. There will be less crime and all of these things. I absolutely believe that if private and government takes hands, we can scale these opportunities. We've shown it. 10 years ago, when we came into play, there's opportunities to scale education to the people that need it most. I think people just need to work together to do it.
Louis, I've heard you mention the idea that people need to work together. But and I know that there are not only your program and the work you've done, you've mentioned, yes, there's Harambee, there is Metropolitan with their program, Discovery has talked about it, Nedbank has got a program, ABSA's got a program. There's so many organizations, even government has a work readiness program. And yet this number is incredibly high. As a leader in this space, and I'm sure you speak to other leaders, what's the problem? Why can't we fix this hole?
You know what I think, Sam? I think people don't start at the outcome. When I plan something, I always look at what's the outcome I want. So the outcome we want is we have to create entrepreneurs with businesses. We need to create employment. Then work our way back. Otherwise, we train for the sake of training. And while it's an opportunity, it's a short-term opportunity. So, in other words, if we're going to create we're going to create opportunities for jobs, then let's start there. What jobs is available, and let's train our people for those jobs. Let's not just train them generically for anything. If we look at it in South Africa and our current where we sit today, is let's create entrepreneurs. Now, something small, like if a rural community can keep the economy in the rural community, that community as a whole will just develop. So what I mean by this is, and I'm making a practical example because I always think, it's best. We go to a community of 5,000 people, and they've got shops, bazaar shops, barbers, and all those things. We look at those people, and we, in essence, just formalize and train those people to have a better understanding. Now, Louis from that community will buy from you, will cut my hair from you, will have my car washed by you, etc. Now you keep an economy in that specific rural area. In other words, the whole rural area gets uplifted. That is one example, I think, from a scalable perspective that we can do. Um, just we need to be outcome driven, not action driven. What outcome do we want for those 7 million plus people? We want them to have jobs, or we want them to have their own businesses where they employ others. Now, another practical example is, let's look at a rural school. Now, in rural schools, some kids only have one meal a day. It's at that school. Okay, we all know it's a social problem in South Africa. What about building a? It's not an expensive hydroponic. Okay, we train people from the community, women, to because they can run a hydroponic farm. Now they run the hydroponic farm. They supply food at a much lower price to the school and the surrounding areas, and we run a development program at that school. And you have got the kids from that school as part of that entrepreneurial development of that one hydroponic farm. Doesn't take a lot of space. It's not expensive to set up, but the difference it can make is immense. Now, those are the kind of initiatives that's one scalable and that's outcome driven. If we're going to train 500 people today to do administration, we're going to sit with a problem because those are the jobs that's being retrenched at the moment. We need to train people in something that for future, for outcome driven. Does that make sense, Sam?
Let me push back a little bit, because your ideas are very basic, very practical. It's almost, in with all due respect, no-brainers. It sounds like somebody at some point should have said, guys, but why can't we keep an economy within this township? Let's upskill people in a practical sense. Now, here is the question that I want to ask. You're a leader in this space. LFP is quite a big player in this space. And you have access to other leaders. Why are the kind of things that you're talking about not being done? Why is government not seeing a simple intervention as a hydroponic farm within a certain space could actually help and empower individuals? Why is government or people in your space still training on the old method, in the old way of training individuals, and not factoring in that there is a set list of new job opportunities that can be created? Why are we not empowering young people with some practical skills to start a car wash, to empower the community? All the things you've mentioned sounds music to my ears, but I know that there's a gap between what you're saying and what's actually happening.
So, Sam, it's absolute no-brainer, by the way. You're 100% right. I think we get stuck into futuristic things so much that we forget that the South African individual is basic. We have basic needs. Food is one of them. Let's fulfill those needs. Now, I'm going to tell you, I presented at very high levels to governments, various departments in governments. I'm currently working excessively with the Agri-BE structure and council for Gauteng, where I'm presenting exactly what I'm talking to you about right now. There is pushback from everywhere. Government, we get to negotiating MOUs where it's outcome-driven, practical projects where we can have the rural economy stay in the economy. It just doesn't move forward. From a corporate SA perspective, I'm having these conversations 3-4 times a day. There's definite buy-in, and we're part of that negotiation. So some of them have already done it. I mean, as you rightly said, those players have had successful programs. I just think it's time to scale those programs. And in order for us to scale programs like this, we need corporate and government buy-in. I find it very difficult. And like I just say, everybody says to me, this is a no-brainer. But it's absolutely no-brainer. You create an economy in the rural area, you create jobs, you create entrepreneurship, you have a training center right there that assists with mentorship, capacity building, understanding of finances, understanding of business expansion. of those programs that I presented recently was chicken farming. Chicken farming also something that we don't need a lot of space. Um, where you can have 10 chicken coops managed by 10 entrepreneurs under supervision of a large corporate in that specific industry as its mentor and who they supply to. Now, some of these large corporates are doing it, but it's not at the rate we need it to happen in South Africa. I'm presenting this constantly every day. And at the end of the day, this is what I believe is needed in South Africa. And we have digital programs we roll out, mentorship, capacity building in agriculture, in business, in entrepreneurship, etc. But at the end of the day, if we do not convert training opportunities with business or employment opportunities, we are making a mistake. Now that hydroponic, that chicken farming, rabbit farming, snail farming, there's farming that can be done in small spaces that makes huge profits, that has a massive impact on rural economies. And we need to do that. I've got a student who travels from a rural community. It costs them 100 Rand just to travel to and from class daily. The problem is now they miss classes because they might not have money to travel. Let's take the opportunity to them. That is what we need to do. So we need that scalability opportunity.
Final question from me, Louis. One of the things that you talk about is that in some instances, students, young people are not even aware of learnership programs, that there's just not enough awareness that's being created for these opportunities. If you had a magic wand and you could change all of this tomorrow, what do you think would need to happen immediately? At the moment, record numbers of unemployment. We are facing a pandemic that has decimated industries. Young people already have been on the outskirts, looking into job opportunities. And also because of the educational nature of this country, some don't have access to, because of finances, to proper education structures. It's not because they can't get the grades, it's because they don't have access to finances. What would you change as a leader in this space that within the next 6 months could immediately start eating away at that high number?
Oh, absolutely. We need to take initiatives to the rural areas. We're isolating people outside of the metros. And we're not giving them opportunities. As you say, they're not aware of it, number one. And number two, they're having difficulties to constantly get access to it. We need to take the opportunities to our people. And in order to do that, we need firm and agreed collaboration between corporate SA and government, because then we can scale it. Otherwise, it will always be isolated, and it will be isolated to an area-specific opportunity that is only available to people in your immediate region. And that I found to be the opportunity. If you ask me today, you've got a magic wand. Is I think business leaders and industry leaders, the key ones with the same goal in uplifting youth and empowering our people for jobs. With government, with the right people in government, need to get together as companies when it comes to employment. We need to collaborate. People want to compete when it comes to unemployment for business reasons. We need to collaborate, get together, and get government on board to scale it to the outer skirts and the rural areas to ensure that the economy stays there, it grows.